On today's episode of the penpodcast.com, I am joined by Janet Wiszowaty. How are you, Janet?
I am fabulous. Thank you. Happy to be
I,
here.
I'm glad, and I bet you are fabulous since I just learned that you are currently in France.
Yes, we got here yesterday and it's beautiful.
How's the weather? I mean, you look a little bundled up, kind of like I do here in New York, but
Do you know what? I think it's 12 Celsius right now. It started raining yesterday. They said the day before was beautiful. We arrived. As long as we don't bring snow, we're okay with the rain.
okay. And you have a rather unique setup where you are, right?
Yes, yes, we're house sitting here. We look after other people's places, travel all over the world.
Yeah, you know what? I would love to hear a little bit more about that just because I mean, I know we've spoken about this, but for the audience, one
Mhm.
of the ultimate goals, at least for me, of being a writer is not being tethered to any one place, having to get up and go to a specific spot. If you can write in this day and age, you can do it from anywhere in the world. And it sounds like you put that into action.
Yes, we started in 2011. I retired from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as an emergency dispatcher. My husband was already retired, and we wanted to travel. And so I learned a long time ago and say instead of saying we can't afford to do something, I say how can we afford to do something? So far we've house sat in Spain, and now we're here all over Canada and several places in the United States, Eastern Arctic, Yukon, just south of Alaska. We look after dogs, cats, horses, and we just found out there's two turtles here that we have to look after too. So, but we belong to two sites. One is called Trusted House Sitter, and we have a profile on that. It's a membership site, and to House Carers, and they're both .com. And I'll send you the links later if you want. And there's no charge, although there are some people that would like to pay us, and we gratefully accept. We pay our own way over overseas anywhere we go. We usually drive if it's in Canada or the United States, depending how much time we have in between. And yeah, gratitude, and that is we're happy with that. Oops. My husband just signed in to listen to this, and he said, "You go in the other room."
I love that. That's so creative. I mean, it sounds like it comes with a little bit of responsibility, but to be able to visit all of these places and just worry about travel must give you a ton of freedom to focus on your writing.
Yeah, and I haven't been doing much writing, but you know what? I'm getting lots of information. I think that I might work on a book on house sitting and all the unique animals that we look after, because the animals have such personalities. We have one dog we looked after. It's like a yoga dog. The way she sleeps is unbelievable. She's all twisted and stuff. But yeah, you know what? It's especially for us. I feel with being retired, we're on a limited income. Not only that, but the biggest thing is keeping busy, and especially with the pandemic, the last 2 years, we didn't get away much, but I was still contracting and traveling at that time. So I was still able to travel, and that was good for me. But you know, I think that speaking for myself, if I was fully retired and I'd be sitting at home, and what would I be doing? Like maybe some volunteer and stuff. This way we get into a community. Like we're rural, very rural. We're about, anybody that knows France, we're about an hour and a half south of Toulouse. We're 3.5 hours from Barcelona, and we're near the Pyrenees Mountains. So, and just maybe an hour's way from the Mediterranean. So, you know what? Who couldn't ask for anything better than this? Because I think for me, travel isn't all about tourism. Travel's about learning about the people, learning about the culture, and shopping where the locals shop. And, you know, we don't speak French. We didn't speak Spanish. Europeans are way smarter than us. They speak several languages usually. And, but, you know, we can communicate. hand actions. We got Google now that can do Google Translate. There's so many options that what somebody might think is an obstruction or stop them from traveling. Talk to me. Like, we'll get you there. We'll talk you into it. But save points, whatever, and look for cheaper ways. And like, we're here for almost 6 weeks, and they're gone for probably a month, but we've got time on either side. And we could rent a car if we wanted, but they're letting us use theirs. So there's, again, our expenses are cut. Your expenses are your accommodations and your food, right? Your meals. If you're at home, you have your accommodations, you pay for your house, and you have you cook your meals at home. So it's no different than here. We went to the grocery store yesterday when we got in, got some groceries. And the other thing is we don't leave our house alone. We have a tenant that looks after everything for us while we're gone. So we never have to worry about our own home.
So while you're house sitting, you have someone house sitting.
Well, they live there.
Oh, they
We
live
have
there.
a renter, a tenant that looks after everything. She has her own 1-bedroom apartment in the location and at the house, and she looks after everything, shovels snow or cuts the grass, whatever it is.
That's fantastic. Now, when you're doing these traveling and this house sitting, do you ever form like relationships or bonds with the people who you've house sat for? You being with their pets for this long? And
Definitely. We're still in touch with the people we were in Spain with. 2019, we house sat over Christmas in Spain for 3 weeks and looked after 3 dogs. And then we leave time because the flights are not always cheap. And then we went on a Mediterranean cruise from Barcelona, and I have a friend in Barcelona, so I met with her. So you just gather people. If you like people and if you like adventure, I think that retirement would be boring if I didn't do any of this.
all right, so you've got my mind spinning, thinking like, where can I house sit? But anyway, back to how we got to this point. When did you know you wanted to be a writer? Like, when did it dawn on you that you were going to write a book?
Do you know what? I think I was about 16 when I thought, oh, I'm going to write a Harlequin romance. And do you know what? I wrote a few pages, and I don't know, I guess my mom probably finally threw it out. And then, you know what? It's sort of in my mind. I got busy with kids and stuff, and just have always ideas and that, but never really put them down. And I have, since 2011, I think I participated in 6 publications with putting stories in. And then in November 2020, I woke up with one morning with this title in my head called The Year the World Paused, because during 2020 with the pandemic, my life didn't change a whole lot. I contracted back with the RC Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and I worked in the Eastern Arctic. So I'd go up for a month at a time. This time I ended up staying for 5 months because so much was shut down. So my experience didn't change much. I went from Nunavut in the Eastern Arctic to the Yukon, which is just south of Alaska, and home. I was only home 15 days out of 2020. So I thought, there's got to be other people like me that viewed or used that time period for something else. And so I put it out to my community and said, hey, who wants to be in this? I'm going to do this compilation of our stories through 2020. And so the end result is that there's 21 authors with their stories on how maybe it started, their 2020 started, and their journey through it and how they came out the other end. So that happened like really fast. So anybody who's thinking of writing, when you get that inspired thought, just go with it, because I put it out there, and by the end of February, I had all my authors in place. I coached them through their stories. We had group Skype Zoom calls where they got to meet each other, because they're all over the world, my authors. And by June 6th, I think the ebook came out. And by the end of August, the paperback came out. That's how fast it happened. But it was that inspired thought that would not leave me alone.
And what I think I find interesting about that, and I'm curious if that was the case, it was inspired by the pandemic, but it was probably also facilitated by the pandemic, because
Yes.
prior to, we were not as even though the resources were there, we were not as connected as we were once everyone had to go remote and virtual.
Yeah, so true. And like one of my authors is from Ghana, West Africa. One is from Switzerland. Three are from the UK. One is in Alaska, and the rest are from the southern, like south of Canada, States and Canada. So, you know, and I didn't realize it because on the book, it's Janet Wiszowaty and 20 other authors, right? That's 21 authors, and it came out in 2021.
Huh.
Not even thinking about that, right? But it was kind of cool.
So being that that was such a passion or a burning desire to get done, and then it happened so quick, what do you do next? Like, where does your writing career go?
Yeah, that's very interesting. One of the things I want to say is just like that inspired thought, I had nothing in place. I had no publisher, I had no editors, and so, but my girlfriend, a friend of mine, had 18 months before created a hybrid publishing company, her and another woman. And so she's not only an author in the book, she's also the publishing company. It's Carnelian Moon. And she's based out of Ottawa, Canada, and her partner's in Florida, in the United States. And I didn't have an editor, so I called a girlfriend of mine who has published several books. I says, will you edit my book? And she says, I won't do the grammar. She says, but I will do the content. And she says, but I recommend the grammar goddess do your grammar and stuff. So just everything started to fall into place. Like I had beta readers, and it was fabulous how everything. So I think the biggest thing I want to tell people is trust. When you get that inspired thought, don't think how can that it can't happen because you don't know how. I didn't know how either. But people show up. Once you make that step, then they show up. So, and going back to your last question of where do I go now, do you know what? I think I went into a bit of a depression after it came out because we all have losses, right? And we all grieve. I think I grieved the end of that book because I was with that. So it's like 6 to 8 months continually with my authors and contact and stuff. And then all of a sudden the book's done. And we couldn't get out there because, again, 2021 lockdown, we couldn't get out there and do what we wanted, book readings and book launches and stuff. We could do it online, but it's not the same. You don't have the same energy. So we haven't got into that yet. And so hoping that'll come out. I also want to get a journal out because you know what? Our world didn't just, the world paused for, say, better 2 years, but our worlds, our personal worlds do pause. You know, I was in bad car accident, so I had to sit on my butt and do new things. And we have, you know, you get married, you're a different person. You have a baby, you're a different person. Your life sort of pauses and you have to figure it out again. And so now I'm doing that, figuring out. I'd like to do a journal on that. I've got a list. It's just, now that I'm back traveling, I think that's what I needed, is just that inspiration again to get going. Like I've got some ideas about a book about house sitting because we just meet the most interesting people and the animals, the pets, and like here they've got pigs and goats that are in the same pen together, and we just went outside to the barn and they're all there like just happy to see you.
Oh, so you're not just like remembering to feed a dog or a cat. You're out there like tending a full-on farm.
Well, pretty much. It's they've got 40 horses, and some of the horses are in a separate field. We have to take a quad up to go and count them every day and make sure that they're all okay and they're all there. And there's 2 older ones that need more of a special care. But you know, you get all your chores done in the morning. And here in France, we can take the dog anywhere we want with us, into restaurants, into stores. We can take them inside with us. So and we have the use of the owner's car, we just can take the dog and just go for hours on end, as long as we're home. The pigs need to be fed twice a day. So at night we come home. Oh, and the chickens. So we got fresh eggs. Like, we don't have to go to the store and buy eggs.
How long did it take you to get like the handbook of what you needed to do on this particular property?
Do you know what? Most homeowners have a guidebook of what they need to do. I had my own horse. My husband had his own horse. Our granddaughter and our daughter both ride and they have horses. We've house sat for horses before. So as long as people tell us what the needs are, the last the house sit that we did in the Yukon, the dogs, we looked after 2 different families. We did back to back, and 3 dogs, and they all had special diets and had to be special time. As long as we've got a list, like, it's a no-brainer. You have to like animals, though. There are house sits that have no animals. Cats are really easy to look after, because most cats, if they're inside, you can leave them for hours unless they need medication. My husband looked after, because I was out of town, but he'll do it sometimes on his own locally. And the one cat needed insulin twice a day. So he would give them the shot. So, you have to be adaptable, or on these sites that we go on, that we're memberships on, you can go through and pick. Like, I just missed one. I just looked at one today. It's in Brittany, France. And you get the use of the vehicle. On the website, you can see what the place looks like. It's in September and into October, and we're already booked for house sitting. So we won't be coming to Brittany this year, but boy, that's one I'll keep my eye out on.
Wow. Are there any places in particular that are on your bucket list to house sit in?
Oh, yeah, Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, uh, Iceland would be cute, neat, Netherlands, anywhere in the world. I've even seen a couple in Israel, and Australia has lots of house sitting places. There's on these house sitting sites that we belong to, they're all over the world. So just pick and choose. I don't know. We were referred by our friends from Canada that also host it. We referred to this couple because we look after horses and that, and they felt comfortable because they know our other friends and they feel really comfortable with us. And believe me, we'll get along like a house on fire here. But you just pick and choose, and we have interviews. Like, people, there's some that I haven't gotten that I would have wanted. There was one when we did Spain. There was one I looked at for France, and it was near the Pyrenees Mountains as well. And she had a cat, but the reason she didn't pick us is because we didn't have a car. And what if we would have had to take the cat to the vet? Unfortunately, you know what? We rented a car when we were in Spain. After we finished our house sit, like, we always put extra time on either side, because if I'm in the country already, then why not? So Les and I are even talking about maybe coming for a longer period of time, maybe 6 months, and just between several countries, we'll just watch for house sits. And if we have to, 6 months, we can do a 6-month lease on a vehicle.
I mean, you could literally just become kind of house sitting nomads.
Oh, definitely. And so this trip, and we're getting older, but I think this keeps us young too. My husband actually will be celebrating his 75th birthday here in April. So we're in France for his big day.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
I think it keeps us young too, because you know what? We're active. When you got to go and feed animals and that, you have a responsibility. They've got my girlfriend's house sat in France here in this area for about the last 4 years. And they've got a walking group together. So, you just get to know people who live here, and you know the secrets. You find out where the best places are to explore. And you don't get that if you just go as a tourist, not necessarily anyways.
So how much inspiration, like, do you think you have any books in you inspired by the places you've been, the houses you've stayed in?
Oh, definitely. All the titles and stuff in my head right now are non, what do you call it? Nonfiction. I think a fictional book might come out of it.
Well, I mean, I would think, at least for me, and maybe it's too close, but since your first one was When the World Paused, you kind of came out of it in a big way, right? Now you're in France for a month. It's like the world went from pause to almost fast forward, like it never happened.
Oh, the end of August, we started getting booked for house sitting. People that knew us, um, people I'd worked with before, says, okay, we're going to go away for this. Can you look after? The first one was my horses. And then another one we had house at before the pandemic. She says, hey, are you guys available for the next one? And since the end of August, we have been booked pretty much steady. And the only month I think that we're clear right open right now is August. Mostly in Canada. This is our European one, but Canada and the United States. We'll be in Florida actually in February or in November house sitting.
Oh, what part of Florida?
It's Lake something. So I can't remember the name, but it shouldn't be. Florida's not that big. I think it's more central. I can't remember.
Okay, Florida's actually pretty big.
Compared to some of our provinces, it's
I
kind of
guess yeah,
small.
Canada is fairly massive. All right. In retrospect, from New York, actually, no, New York's pretty big too, but again, not in comparison to Canada.
Yeah, and like when we went up to the Yukon, we drove. Like that was 27 hours. And you have a couple stretches of 5 hours, especially in the winter. There's nothing open, no gas stations, nothing for 5 hours steady. And you may pass a couple trucks, like hauling goods. But we saw buffalo, we saw wolves, we saw caribou, we saw a moose. A moose were trotting along the road beside us. You know, it's just wonderful.
I love it. And I want to jump back to something you had mentioned earlier about when you finished the book, not having, a plan in place, not giving any thought to publishing, editing. What was your experience with deciding? Because there are many authors out there who will just finish the work and get it out there, as opposed to at some point deciding to get a professional involved on some level or another. So what was your experience in deciding to use professionals for both your developmental editing, your copy editing, the publishing part of the process?
For me, it was a no-brainer to have a publishing company. And of course, the big ones wouldn't even look at something like you, and cost effective, right? I did doing with a hybrid publishing company. It's work with you. So they knew what I was willing to take on and then where I needed help from them. And so I was willing, I worked with each one of the authors. And one of the things I did is I would go, like one of the authors, I think I had 4 or 5 drafts. And it was like going through the drafts to get it cohesive, right? Because some of them have written before and some of them haven't put something together before. We had one of the authors, the first draft was like 7,000 words, and I gave them a limit 2,000 to 4,000 words. And so that author got it down to 5,000. And then we gave it to our content editor, who got it down to just about 2,000, because that author had different stories within, and the content author was able to take these and separate them apart. And he was so grateful, because it's when it's your own work, it's tough to do that. It's tough to take out a word or change a word, and grammar too. I read a lot, and I have read some pretty poor edited books, and I'm sure you have as well. And I didn't want that. I wanted to put out a good product. I wanted to put a product out that would be have longevity, because I see this book as for people's stories anywhere. It can be into anything, but it's just sharing a story that triggers something else, or helps you see things in a different way, right? It's a directional change or whatever, because it's like an aha. Okay, if that person did that, I could do that. Sometimes if we just see somebody else is able to do it, you can think, well, I'm no different. Why can't I do that? Of course you can, right? And having the grammar editor, I cannot believe, and the experience itself was my husband and I and my girlfriend and my author, that's the editor. We all read those stories as well as the editors. I do not know how many times. And the final reading, ready to go to print, and I thought, I'm going to read them one more time. And I found 2 errors in one. Simple errors, like a comma where maybe a period should be, and one where an S was and it should have been a Z. So that's how much detail we went into the editing of this book.
Yeah, I have seen it. In fact, one of my biggest pieces of advice to most people outside of getting the professional editing is waiting at least a week or two after that's done, and then go back and reread it with a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, totally. You're in a different place. Today I'm reading and it makes sense, and then tomorrow I might be in a different place and thinking, oh, how did I miss that? And that's the biggest thing. How did I miss that? It's so obvious now, right? So I think editing is very, very important. I also did something else, because one of my beta readers, there's a story in there of a woman's father who passed, and not from COVID. And she said, Janet, I don't think I can read this story. I was just, okay. And then she came back and she says, okay, I read it. Her mother, my friend's mother, had passed away before I'd even met her. So more than 20 years before. She was still processing that. And when she read this story, even though it, it was growth for this person, and that's what the stories are meant to be. It's like our struggles and stuff, but our growth that came out at the other end. And so I thought, you know what? There's sometimes things will happen to us. Somebody will give us advice, or we'll go through something and not understand it. So I'll give you an example. So when I first started my job at 18 years old in this big city of Winnipeg, because I came from a town of 500 people, and some of the girls were putting money away every month on Canada Savings Bonds. So they were investing a little bit every month. And I said to my grandfather, I said, hey, Papa, should I be doing this? And he says, well, there's better ways to invest. Okay. Did he explain or try and teach me? No. Did I invest? No, because in my mind, there's always better ways, right? So when Kathy told me about this, I thought, how can we help people who might be triggered by a story? So I've got four people, and in the end of the book, that somebody could work with if they want. So they're coaches, they've been through some experience. A couple of them are authors in the book, and other people I know, 4 people that I have worked with personally and had them take me through processes. So I had them, and they were paid resources. They paid to have, I invited some, but vetted who I had worked with, who I trusted. And so I wrote a little bit about how important it is that when you struggle with something, to seek out help, because there is help there, and nobody should ever suffer in silence or anything. Or, you know what, somebody said once, there's no stupid questions. Well, there aren't, because it's your question. Why do you think it's stupid? Just because you might know the answer doesn't mean that everybody knows the same thing you know. And so but I stress in there how important it is. These people are there if you want to work with them, but find somebody to work with. Like this wasn't an easy time for a lot of people. My authors managed to get through it. We have one of our authors had went through the endings of a sex change and had to have major surgery in 2020, and it got canceled once or twice. So there's, trauma everywhere. The end result is beautiful, and he's very, very happy, and a wonderful story. So the book is not just about oh dear, there was COVID, we were shut down. That's not it. It's a personal stories that they share their life with on here, their journey. And you might not care for all the stories in the book, but sometimes we just read a chapter in a book and it'll change us. It doesn't, there's knowledge everywhere, and there's help for everybody everywhere. And we just don't know always where it's going to come from. And I really hope that people will get lots of value from the book.
I absolutely think that they will. There isn't a single person on earth, I don't think, who wasn't impacted in one way, shape, or form by what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It wasn't a regional incident. It wasn't a. It was worldwide. Every single person, every single day.
And you know what? And some of them made you laugh. One of my authors says, "Well," I says, "Come on, I got to get your story." And she says, "Well, it's not very good. Just send it. I'll let you know." And this is, her name's Catherine, and she's in Ghana. And I tell you, we read the first part of her story, and we just burst out laughing because it was delightful. She's talking about, she just found out everything had shut down. She says, "I'm sitting here having a glass of whiskey. I don't even like whiskey." She said, and it goes on, because somebody given it her as a gift, but she was just trying to process all of this about shutdowns, and she travels in her job from country to country, and it was like, but we just how she expressed it in her writing, I thought, yeah, that's how a lot of people probably would have been, like, a drink and like, oh my God, what's happening next?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we all have stories like that in our life. I highly recommend everyone check it out. See how other people experience this, because even though it impacted every single person every single day, every single person's lens and view, experiences, what they walked away with is different. And sometimes just seeing what it meant for someone else can change the impact that it had on us.
Totally.
Janet, where can people find out more about you? Website, social media? How can they stay in touch and see what you're up to next?
Social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and it's Janet Wiszowaty. My business is Worldly Connections. We're working on a website. We're working on a landing page for the book. But you know what? People can always text me, message me. I can give you my cell number that I'm always monitoring is in Canada. So it's 780-983-0840. But yeah, you can find me on social media. I'm there. You can phone me. I coach. You know what? I went through PTSD because of my job and worked with a psychologist. You guys, there are professionals everywhere, whether they're traditional or non-traditional. And you know what? That's how we heal. And so if anybody just wants to talk, I'm here.
I love it. That's such an amazing offer. I want to thank everyone listening for taking the time to tune in and hear this wonderful conversation with Janet Wiszowaty. Take her up on the offer. If you need to talk to somebody, head over to her LinkedIn, her Instagram, follow, go over to Amazon, pick up a copy of the book, read them story by story. No need to sit down and read it all in one shot. It's definitely an easy read that you don't have to sit down and do in one sitting. Janet, thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time out today to speak to us.
My pleasure. And you guys all have a great day.
You too.